Hey fighters, we're back with our series on learning how to modify our workouts and movements that we see in our workout. Today, what I want to go through is some body weight movements that we can modify to make it appropriate for us within the class. And again, it's interesting to think about when you're doing, especially something that might be a higher rep. Let's say in one of our new circuits for our body weight and band portion of the workout, that there calls for 20 push-ups. 20 push-ups in a row is difficult, and maybe the first couple you're actually doing on your toes, full range of motion, but for you to continue that is going to start letting our technique really not be to the standard that we want it to. So it is 100% okay. Let's modify our movement until we can really get the stamina, endurance, and strength to be able to go longer for the bigger technique. And at the same time, if you're sore or you've got an injury and you don't want to have the full intensity of a movement, we want to make sure we can modify those. So a couple movements we're going to go through today. We're going to do some push-ups, we're going to do sit-ups, we're going to do squats, lunges, and some basic ideas for bounding motions like jumping and jumping jacks and how to modify those. So like we said, for both things, for our body weight, we have two things to think about to modify. Number one is range of motion. And then number two, can we change the movement to make it something that is slightly less intense? So when it comes to a push-up, obviously when we talk about our standard for a push-up, we have our body straight, we're on our toes, we want to see a full range of motion and come up and down. If that is going to be our starting standard, we can, one, do less of a range of motion, or two, modify the movement to make it easier. So we're going to drop our knees. Now we can fight for better range of motion. One thing you'll want to be cautious of, especially when you're pushing yourself and challenging yourself, is if I start to do less range of motion, but now I start to lose some body and spinal mechanics, that's not really going to be safe over time. So we always want to prioritize proper technique over just the results of reps. And then even from that modification of dropping our knees down, if this is still too difficult for our push-ups, let's bring our knees in a little bit more and then still focus on having that chest come in between your arms. And if we needed one more modification, we've had people that have had shoulder injuries or some difficulty with their shoulders. We don't want to put a lot of pressure and weight on that. We've actually done push-ups with hands on the wall, feet back, and then we're just slowly coming down and up with good control. So we're going to go less speed, less range of motion, and change of our body. Next one is going to be our sit-ups. Full range of motion for a sit-up. We love to have heels down, knees bent, body all the way to the floor, and then I want to come up to about that 90-degree position. First one that I'm going to say to modify is just how far you're coming up. So instead of doing the full range of motion sit-up, let's just focus on having the upper body slowly come up in more of a crunch style motion. That'll be your first modification. If you need another modification, sometimes we'll encourage people to actually grab their legs, or if you have a resistance band, to hold the resistance band, so that will help propel you up with not as much body weight to do the actual movement. The third movement we want to go through is your squats. You know, especially if someone has some knee issues or former injury in your knees, the standard that we're looking for in a squat is with your heels down, good posture and midline control. Ideally, we fight to get where your hip is slightly below your knee, the top of the knee. So the hip crease is slightly below the top of your knee, and then we come all the way up into this full extended position. So the first modification is keeping your heels down, just go down about a quarter of the way, right? And then you can start to work on it a little bit more, being cautious and conscious of what does it feel like in your knee and making sure that you're not having any type of pain. And then each week we're slowly stepping in to a little bit more range of motion. One kind of cue that you can make sure when you're doing a squat is if you feel as you go down, your heels want to come up, don't go down as low. Really think about sending your hip backwards to keep your heels on the ground and then fight for that range of motion. Once this feels good, then we can go a little lower and just slowly keep running through the range of motion pain-free. The next one is a lunge. Same idea, just modify the range of motion for your lunge, similar to a squat. One of the biggest things that we see when people do lunges that we want to avoid is that our heel comes off the ground on the front leg. We want to make sure that heel stays on the ground. We've got great stability there. Then focus on taking that back knee and letting it come all the way down. The ideal standard is we have this 90 degree position with an upright torso. But if I am just slightly coming down and switching, slightly coming down, so modify the range of motion, modify the speed that you're doing the motion. And then the last one that I wanted to cover is some bounding motions. We actually just recently had someone that hurt their ankle doing something else, but they still wanted to train. So jumping jacks, where my feet and hands are coming out, were a little issue of having some type of high impact on that ankle. So we would do jumping jack and put one foot out at a time. We don't have to come off the ground. Even when we do things that are a little more bounding motions, from the kicking stance, just stay stationary. From a leap, just step, right? So just stay on the ground when those high impact positions could compromise our own training. So have fun with those next time you're doing need a modification.